Let me tell you talking tips. Leo harbored a deep secret, a burning desire to speak English fluently, yet an overwhelming dread of actual conversation. He spent countless hours immersed in textbooks and online lessons, absorbing grammar rules and vocabulary lists with dedication. But the moment an opportunity arose to articulate a thought, his mind would invariably freeze. His tongue felt heavy and clumsy, a prisoner of his intense self-scrutiny. "I don't want to make a mistake," he'd whisper to himself, a mantra of fear. This pervasive fear was a constant companion, shadowing every attempt. He understood the grammar perfectly, could write essays with precision, but speaking felt like a foreign concept. He wondered, why do I always make mistakes when I try to speak? What is wrong with me? This self-criticism gnawed at him. He often considered the way of learning English that others advocated. Many suggested simply diving in, but that felt impossible to him. He longed for practical, talking tips, a secret formula to unlock his vocal cords. His frustration grew with each passing day, seeing opportunities slip away because of his inability to articulate his thoughts effectively and confidently with anyone. Leo tirelessly sought advice on how to think and speak simultaneously. His brain, however, seemed to operate in two separate compartments, one for thought, one for language. Bridging this gap felt like an insurmountable challenge, a mental block he couldn't bypass. He yearned for a natural flow, where ideas transitioned seamlessly into coherent spoken words without hesitation. The idea of how to speak with people filled him with dread. Simple interactions became monumental tasks. He imagined awkward silences, mispronounced words, and the judgment in others' eyes. This vivid imagination of failure prevented him from even attempting small talk, isolating him further in his quiet struggle, reinforcing his belief that he simply couldn't do it. He knew he needed to take the first step for talking, but what was it? Every potential opening felt like a cliff edge, an abyss of potential embarrassment. The sheer weight of expectation, self-imposed and imagined, held him captive. He would rehearse sentences in his head, only to have them disintegrate into incoherent fragments when faced with a real human being. Why I always make mistakes, he pondered, was a question that plagued his every waking moment. He replayed conversations in his mind, dissecting every misplaced word, every grammatical error. This relentless analysis only reinforced his belief in his own inadequacy, creating a vicious cycle of fear, failure, and renewed self-doubt. He needed a different approach. His mentor, an old friend who had mastered several languages, noticed Leo's struggle. "Leo," she said gently, "your problem isn't knowledge, it's courage. And your solution starts with your ears." This cryptic advice confused Leo initially, but he trusted her wisdom. He decided to follow her guidance, even if it seemed counterintuitive to his speaking goal. "You must listen English," she emphasized. "Not just passively, but actively, absorb the rhythm, the intonation, the natural flow. Don't focus on individual words initially, but on the melody of the language. Let it sink deep into your subconscious." Leo decided to commit to this method, dedicating hours each day to listening to various audio materials. He started by listening to podcasts about his hobbies, then moved to documentaries, and eventually, English audiobooks. He didn't always understand every word, but he focused on the context and the sound patterns. He diligently followed the advice, immersing himself completely in the auditory experience, allowing the language to wash over him effortlessly. Alongside listening, his mentor encouraged English story reading. Read aloud, she advised, even if it's just to yourself. Feel the words in your mouth, hear your own voice. It builds muscle memory and connects your eyes, brain, and mouth in a harmonious rhythm. Leo found a comfortable corner in his room and began reading stories. He started with simple children's books, then moved to short novels, carefully pronouncing each word, even when unsure. This act of reading aloud, though initially awkward, gradually became less intimidating. He focused on the narrative, allowing himself to get lost in the stories, rather than focusing solely on his pronunciation mistakes. Why you must listen, his mentor reiterated, is because it's the foundation of natural speech. Babies don't learn grammar first, they listen. They absorb. This input builds the intuitive understanding of how sentences are formed and how words connect naturally. This explanation finally resonated with Leo, making perfect sense to him. Leo began to notice subtle shifts. When he listened, phrases started to feel familiar. When he read aloud, his tongue felt less clumsy. He wasn't speaking with others yet, but the internal fear was beginning to subside. He was laying a solid groundwork, building confidence from within before venturing out into real conversations. His mentor then introduced him to simple, talking tips. Start with mirroring, she suggested. Repeat what you hear. Not just individual words, but entire phrases, trying to match the intonation and speed. This trick trains your mouth and ears together, making pronunciation less daunting. Leo began shadowing native speakers. He'd listen to a short sentence from a podcast, pause it, and then repeat it exactly as he heard it. This exercise felt less like speaking and more like mimicking, which reduced his anxiety about making original mistakes. He focused purely on imitation, refining his pronunciation without the pressure of forming new thoughts. Next, she encouraged him to practice how to think and speak internally. Narrate your day in English inside your head, she said. Describe objects, actions, plans. This builds the mental bridge between thought and expression without external pressure. It's your private rehearsal space. Leo started a silent daily monologue. As he walked to work, he'd mentally describe the buildings, the weather, his feelings. While cooking, he'd narrate the steps. This constant internal chatter slowly transformed his thought process, making it easier to formulate sentences spontaneously. The fear of thinking in English diminished significantly over time. The biggest hurdle remained: how to speak with people. His mentor had a clever solution. Find a language exchange partner who is also learning your native language. The pressure will be reciprocal, and you can support each other. It's a safe space to make mistakes. Leo hesitantly agreed to try it. He found Elena, a friendly Russian woman learning his language. Their first few sessions were awkward, filled with long pauses and mutual apologies. But the shared vulnerability created an environment of trust and understanding. They both knew the struggle of learning a new language from scratch. Elena became his sounding board, his safe haven for experimentation. He started with simple greetings, then moved to describing his week, always encouraged by her patience. The fear of making mistakes gradually lessened with each successful, albeit imperfect, interaction. He found courage in her presence. His mentor then gave him a crucial, talking tip: embrace mistakes. They are not failures, they are data points. Each mistake tells you exactly what you need to learn. Without them, you wouldn't know where to improve. This perspective shifted Leo's entire mindset about learning. He started to view his errors not as reasons to quit, but as signposts on his journey to fluency. When he stumbled, he no longer felt crushed. Instead, he thought, that's something to review later. This change in attitude was profound, alleviating much of his previous anxiety. Taking the first step for talking outside of his safe space with Elena was still daunting, but now he had tools. He started with ordering coffee in English, then asking for directions. Small, low-stakes interactions became his new practice ground, building his confidence incrementally. He meticulously planned his interactions, rehearsing the phrases he might need. Even if the conversation veered off script, he tried to remember his mentor's advice: listen, think, and just try. He discovered that most people were understanding and patient, not judgmental at all. The question, why I always make mistakes, no longer haunted him. He understood that mistakes were inevitable parts of the learning process, not indicators of inherent inadequacy. He stopped demanding perfection from himself, allowing space for growth and natural development in his skills. His commitment to listen English remained unwavering. He diversified his listening materials, from news broadcasts to stand-up comedy, exposing himself to different accents and conversational styles. This broad exposure significantly improved his comprehension and expanded his vocabulary. English story reading also continued to be a cornerstone of his learning. He found joy in immersing himself in complex narratives, noticing how authors crafted sentences and developed themes. Reading exposed him to nuances of language that direct conversation sometimes missed. His mentor consistently reminded him, why you must listen is because it builds your intuitive grammar. You internalize sentence structures without conscious effort. It's like building a mental library of correct English patterns, ready for recall when you need to speak naturally. Leo realized that fluency wasn't about avoiding mistakes, but about speaking despite them. It was about communicating effectively, even if imperfectly. This realization liberated him from his self-imposed prison of perfectionism, allowing him to truly connect with others. He started joining English-speaking online forums related to his hobbies, initially contributing only by reading, then by posting short comments. This felt less intimidating than real-time conversation, allowing him to practice written English before attempting spoken dialogue. His confidence grew incrementally. He started attending local English conversation groups, first as a silent observer, then slowly interjecting a sentence or two. The supportive atmosphere of these groups provided another safe space for him to practice his developing skills. The talking tips he received and developed for himself became ingrained habits. He would pause, take a breath, and formulate his thoughts, no longer rushing or panicking. He learned to manage his anxiety, transforming it into a controllable energy source. He consciously applied how to think and speak by giving himself a few seconds to organize his thoughts internally before speaking aloud. This brief mental rehearsal significantly reduced his verbal stumbles and made his delivery smoother and more coherent. As for how to speak with people, he adopted a proactive approach. Instead of waiting to be spoken to, he initiated conversations. Simple questions, genuine interest in others, and a friendly demeanor opened many doors for interaction and practice. The first step for talking evolved from just speaking a word to confidently starting an entire conversation. He realized that the initial hesitation was the hardest part, and once past that threshold, the conversation often flowed more naturally. He still made mistakes, of course. Everyone does. But why I always make mistakes transformed into, how can I learn from this mistake? He kept a small notebook of common errors, reviewing them periodically, turning weaknesses into areas of growth. Listen English was no longer a chore but a pleasure. He found himself genuinely enjoying English movies and TV shows without subtitles, understanding almost everything. This immersion solidified his understanding and enhanced his overall fluency tremendously. English story reading became a cherished habit. He explored different genres, from classic literature to contemporary fiction, enriching his vocabulary and appreciation for the intricacies of the language. His reading speed and comprehension improved significantly. The constant emphasis on why you must listen truly resonated. It built an intuitive grasp of idioms, collocations, and natural phrasing that no grammar book could teach. It gave him an ear for what sounded right, rather than just grammatically correct. Leo's journey was far from over, but the transformation was profound. He was no longer the shy, hesitant individual paralyzed by fear. He was a confident communicator, ready to engage, even if it meant stumbling occasionally. He embraced the process. He started offering his own talking tips to friends who were struggling, sharing his personal experience and the strategies that worked for him. He became an advocate for embracing imperfection and focusing on communication over flawless execution. His way of learning English had become holistic, a combination of active listening, immersive reading, intentional internal monologue, and brave, consistent spoken practice. He realized there was no single magic bullet, but a blend of many efforts. The internal question of, I don't want to make mistake but I always why, had faded. He understood that mistakes were simply part of the journey, learning opportunities disguised as errors. He no longer viewed them as personal failures, but as feedback. He now knew how to think and speak by allowing his thoughts to flow naturally into English without the internal translation step. This direct connection between thought and speech significantly increased his fluency and spontaneity in conversations. How to speak with people had transitioned from a source of anxiety to a source of joy. Every conversation was an opportunity to connect, to learn, and to grow. He actively sought out chances to speak, rather than shying away from them. Taking the first step for talking was no longer a hurdle. It was a natural progression, a simple act of opening his mouth and sharing his thoughts. The initial fear had been replaced by a quiet confidence, built on consistent effort and small victories. "Why I always make mistakes" had morphed into, "How wonderful that I made a mistake, now I know how to get better." This positive reframing transformed his entire learning experience, making it enjoyable and sustainable in the long term. He continued to listen English daily, finding new podcasts, audiobooks, and interviews that broadened his horizons and kept his ear tuned to the language. Listening remained the bedrock of his continuous improvement journey. English story reading was now a comfort, a daily ritual that deepened his appreciation for the language's beauty and complexity. It wasn't just about learning words, but about understanding culture and human experience through narratives. The truth of "why you must listen" became clearer with each passing day. It was the secret ingredient, the passive absorption that fueled his active production. It taught him the rhythm, the music of English, making his own speech more natural. Leo's story is a testament to perseverance. He proved that overcoming the fear of mistakes is the true key to unlocking fluency. His journey was a slow, steady climb, fueled by patience, strategic practice, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. He discovered that communication superseded perfection. Connecting with people, sharing ideas, and understanding different perspectives were the real rewards, far more valuable than speaking without a single grammatical error. His world expanded. His transformation served as an inspiration to others. He often told them, "Don't wait for perfection. Start where you are. Make mistakes. Listen, read, speak. The journey is the reward, and every step, no matter how small, counts." Leo, once a silent observer, now actively participated in discussions, debates, and social gatherings, his voice clear and confident. He hadn't eradicated mistakes, but he had conquered fear. And in doing so, he truly found his English voice.